Welcome, everyone. We're very glad you're joining us today for our celebration of our Ensamble Studio virtual exhibition, Ca'n Terra, Architecture of the Earth, with a performance by Fast Forward and poetry by Howe. After the presentation, we're going to follow up with a Q&A and discussion. If you're not familiar with the Zoom webinar, the Q&A function is at the bottom of the screen, and feel free to ask questions on the chat during the event. T-Space's founder, architect Stephen Hall, and I are here on the grounds, in the Woodlands of Rhinebeck, New York, and it's really great to see so many of our longtime friends here, and also many new friends from all over the world. For those of you who are new to T-Space, we're a nonprofit organization focused on the synthesis of art, architecture, music, and poetry, and how they inspire each other. We offer a 30-acre nature reserve with sculptural installations, experimental architecture, a new archive and research library, and art exhibitions, poetry readings, and music by international and emerging artists with a multidisciplinary perspective. We have a strong focus on education and ecology and provide a summer architecture residency for emerging architects from around the world. We hope you'll come visit us in real life in the Hudson Valley next summer. And now on with the show. Fast Forward is a New York-based composer and experimentalist who adopts a sculptural approach to creating sound. He examines the sensual, tactile qualities of objects, tying their sounds to the physical gestures that create them. His collaborators have included Merce Cunningham, Robert Ashley, and Pauline Oliveros. Today, Fast will perform Hydrated Metallics, a selection of works for mixed metals, live from his home in the Upper Delaware Valley in New York. Here's Fast.
Hi everyone. Yes, I'm coming to you from the Upper Delaware Valley. This is my driveway here. And I'm going to perform a suite of short pieces for you, about 20 minutes long, called Hydrated Metallics for metals and water. And I'm outside here, so anything can happen in terms of cars or birds or any other kind of live animal. But I'm going to start with a piece from 35 years ago called Don't Drop Handlebars. I got a bit more water than expected.
Thank you, Fast. That was wonderful. Next up, we have Marie Howe, the New York-based author of 4 volumes in poetry, including The Good Thief, What the Living Do, and The Kingdom of Ordinary Time. Marie is an educator and editor, and the recipient of many awards and fellowships. Marie is, in her words, obsessed with the metaphysical, the spiritual dimensions of life as they present themselves in this world. Here is Marie.
Mute. Hi, everyone. Can you see me? Can you see me? It's very, because let me just try and change this. Hello. I'm so happy to be here. What an extraordinary experience that was, being with Fast Forward. Extraordinary. I loved it. I'm going to read very briefly. We're we are here through the miracle of technology together in a pandemic. There are many pandemics, as we have become aware, raging throughout our country right now and the world. The pandemic of the COVID virus, of course, and of course also the pandemic of racism and institutionalized and internalized racism. I've been, of course, as many of us have been thinking about this a great deal, about the uprising that's going on right now, about the youth in our cities, about the brave moms linking arms, and so many people standing up for Black lives that do matter. So I'd like to begin with a poem by the great Lucille Clifton, the great, great Lucille Clifton. Lucille Clifton was born in 1936 near Buffalo, New York, the city closest to the city I grew up in, which is Rochester, New York. She died in 2010. She was greatly celebrated and awarded. She was a Chancellor of the Academy of American Poets. She was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize several times. She won pretty much all the major awards. But the aspect of Lucille I really want to mention today is that whatever room she stood up in, and if I happened to be there, I felt less embarrassed. She had this extraordinary authenticity and spaciousness. And well, she's been a great, huge influence on my life and on my work. So this is a poem by Lucille, and it's called, Won't You Celebrate With Me? Won't you celebrate with me what I have shaped into a kind of life? I had no model, born in Babylon, both non-white and woman. What did I see to be except myself? I made it up here on this bridge between starshine and clay, my one hand holding tight my other hand. Come celebrate with me that every day something has tried to kill me and has failed. Lucille Clifton. Her last book, which contains so many of her poems, is called Blessing the Boats, New and Selected Poems by Lucille Clifton. I've been teaching eco-poetry for the last 5 years at Sarah Lawrence College. I say teaching, but I've really been learning eco-poetry. I've been learning about the living world. And I'm so happy to be here with T-Space, which really out loud acknowledges the ecological and the architectural and the musical and the poetic is all related. I've been reading marvelous books, and two I want to mention today is a book called Dirt by William Bryant Logan. Maybe some of you know this book, but if you haven't read it, I urge you just to go get it right away. It's in paperback. And through this book, I learned that we really are from another world, that the one thing we know about dirt is that we don't know where it came from, except that it came from the detritus of exploding stars, which our cooling planet pulled onto itself. And within this detritus, life began. We don't know how. The other thing, I'm a baby when it comes to reading about all these things and trying to learn, but of course, trying to read Stephen Hawking's, I came to believe in the singularity, what he calls the singularity, which was or was, depending on if you believe in linear or circular time, the extremely dense matter, so tiny and so dense, as big as our baby fingernail, from which in the Big Bang, everything blew up everything blew up from. So I'd like to read this poem called The Singularity, and it's after Stephen Hawking. Do you sometimes want to wake up to the singularity we once were? So compact, nobody needed a bed or food or money. Nobody hiding in the school bathroom or home alone, pulling open the drawer where the pills are kept. For every atom belonging to me, as good belongs to you. Remember, there was no nature, no them, no tests to determine if the elephant grieves her calf or if the coral reef feels pain. Trashed oceans don't speak English or Farsi or French. Would that we could wake up to what we were when we were ocean. And before that, to when sky was earth and animal was energy and rock was liquid and stars were space and space was not at all, nothing. Before we came to believe humans were so important, before this awful loneliness. Can molecules recall it? What once was before anything happened? No I, no we, no one, no was, no verb, no noun, only a tiny, tiny dot brimming with is, all, everything, home. And I'm going to read one more poem, which is very, very new. Let me see if I can pull it up here. It's a poem that came from a dream. And the dream was about a class that had no teacher. And everyone in the world was in this class. And we were all singing. So the poem is called The Hymn. Beginning with an almost inaudible human hum, rising in praise of the solar winds and dust and far dim galaxies, for the moon and sun slowly growing louder, a song without words for the snow falling, for snow, conceiving rain, the low rumbling thunder and crack of lightning, the rivers rushing without shame, the hum turning again higher into a riff of ridges, peaks, hard as consonants, summits and praise, for the rocky faults and crust and crevices, then down, down to the roots and rocks and burrows and the lake's skittery, shimmering surfaces, wells, oceans, breaking waves, the salt, deep, warm bodies moving within it, the cold, deep, the deep underneath gleaming, and then dark, dark, all of us at last together, breaking into harmonies we'd not known possible, finding our voices as we found our true place, singing in a million, million keys, the human hymn of praise for every something else there is, and ever was, and will be, and the song rising. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie. That was a beautiful reading. Thank you. We're very thrilled to present Ensemble Studio architects Anton Garcia Abril and Deborah Mesa and their wonderful exhibition, Ca'n Terra. Thanks so much, Deborah and Anton, for pivoting with us when the world changed in March and creating this experimental virtual show. Balancing imagination and reality, art and science. Ensemble's work innovates typologies, technologies, and methodologies to address issues as diverse as the construction of the landscape or the prefabrication of the house. Anton and Deborah are educators whose works are extensively published and exhibited, and they are the recipients of numerous international prizes. Today, they are joining us from Brookline, Massachusetts. Here are Anton and Deborah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susan and Stephen and all the team in this space. It's been a pleasure to work with you the past months to shift things as needed to accommodate to the circumstances. We are all certainly very adaptable, and this is good news. But it's great that we were able to make it happen, and it was great to have at least this session together with Marie and with Fast Forward. And I hope that people can also enjoy the beautiful space that Ca'n Terra is, that I think brings a lot of peace and gravity to these certainly uncertain times. So I hope you will enjoy the walk with us. And we want to start, we will end with that, with a walk through the space, through the exhibition that then everybody can explore on their own. And we encourage that. We will start just with a small introduction to give some context to the work, and also to explain a bit how Ca'n Terra came to life.
And how we arrived there. I think this is a life itinerary that drove us to Ca'n Terra. We always say that it was Ca'n Terra that found us, but we want to tell a little bit of about ourselves, our practice, our life through architecture, so you can understand why we got fully enamored of that space. This first slide somehow pixelates, zoom, grid way, some of the different snapshots of our obsessions, our work. As you can see, flows from very materic approaches, as Susan was saying, to tectonic assemblies. And if there's an invariant of all this, it has been always this encounter between the natural and the human psyche, the human interactions, everything that comes from our desires and our hunger to defy, in this case, gravity or the senses or the material world.
Yeah, the overarching topic of the exhibition that is called Architecture of the Earth defines a topic that we've been coming across throughout the years and working on it through very different works. It certainly starts in our early works. The images that you were showing come from the northwest of Spain, from Galicia, from these very raw landscapes where we, for the first time, came across the industrial, the landscape, the material, architecture at the same time. And from there, this kind of explosion of very different things that the architecture can work with became very evident in this time of our work, and also in the works that we developed in Galicia that were done with granite that we extracted from the local quarries, where we spent quite a lot of time working and learning.
For us, a quarry has been our natural habitat since our early days of exploration. Here's where we learned what's the connection between the given fruit of the earth in its parts, how we process them, and how we could put them together into human constructs, edifices, structures, art pieces.
and topics that are important for the project of Ca'n Terra, like what happens to an industrial space, what happens to waste material after it's lost its meaning, what can happen after, and what the imagination of the architect can, or the artist can imbue it with. It's something that we encountered in these first works, and that then we continue to develop, working with stone or sometimes fabricating stones.
And working with the earth has always fascinated us, and it took us some time to engineer all the forces and energies that occur when you work with the earth. No? These enormous forces that you have to curate, and these masses that ultimately bring the spatial event into scene and makes this amazing moment of poetic communion between matter and space and our own humanity together.
Yeah, the works that we are showing, these last ones in Montana, in the United States, they deal with this connection between the landscape and architecture as a very primal, visceral action on the environment. Architecture as shelter, where we work with the essential, so then these essential parts become very powerful. The idea of mass, the idea of the textures of the materials of architecture as a shelter.
And we use the earth as canvas. We use the earth as inspiration. We use the earth as framework to create these kind of connections among architecture and the material world. We have been practicing this synthesis in the boundaries of sometimes disciplinar, let's say, architecture. So, as you can see in this slide, this was what we found in, in a moment of, I would say, gracious serendipity, an abandoned, residual, very beautiful ruin that had been abandoned and enclosed for more than a century.
So this space is in the island of Menorca. It used to be a sandstone quarry. It used to be land. Then it was a sandstone quarry where they extracted the material to build many of the buildings of the island. And this is an island, so as you can imagine, the resources that exist there are extensively used. And after it lost that use, it became, during the Civil Spanish War, it became a hub for the military, where they would keep some of the ammunition and they would have activities. And we encountered it after abandonment without it being architecture, although for us, it read as such when we found it.
The discovery was, a shock and also an act of faith, because what we found was a dark hole that we couldn't even read. No? So here started the technology part, the architecture process, where we were capable to laser scan everything, giving the technology the ability to read rather than to our eyes. No? So these beautiful drawings somehow reflect those vibrant lines, those energies of light that the laser was spitting all over its different textures. No? And we discovered just with these prints, the beauty of that space, how it was going to vibrate, and the amazing uncertainties that a man-made construction without willing to be architecture could contain as a space quality.
Yeah, I think we found the scan and the cuts taken out of those scans to be really precise ways of documenting the space. that probably other more disciplinary architectural documents wouldn't have done the same job, or the job with the same precision. Being able to give us the dimensions of the space to work with, but also the spirit and the depth and the layering of the space of Ca'n Terra.
And through the analysis of this kind of given fruit of space, this objet trouvé, we suddenly encounter an architecture that has lost Euclidean properties, where there's no lines, no planes, no axialities, just raw and pure spatial condition that made this existence really, really attractive for us. We understood that through this first kind of scan, we could really transform the fantastic composition of the plan into an habitable space. And here's where we were completely hooked and in hands of the project. From this moment on, we were just driven and pushed by all the inertias of the space. And I think this is an important lesson of architecture, where every project, there's a moment that conducts you. You just have to follow it, push it, and try to interpret its mandate, its directions, and just operate as I would say, an obedient servant of the invariants and principles of how the space is conducting you. As you can see in this plan, I mean, I could not have made it better. And we tried all the time to add something without discovering any need to it. So after this analysis, the project started pretty much as an act of reclaiming that initial landscape, cleaning it, giving it some comfort, a certain level of hygiene, and fundamental legibility as an habitable space, and just not trying to cross these boundaries between a man-made, a given. This is this blurry, beautiful, hybrid, intermediate moment that we wanted to maintain. And this noise hides all the action of just cleaning up, erasing those stains of hunger, thirst, and humidity, and just catching up with the original sand that is compressed.
I think this video can show very clearly how this space doesn't really need huge actions to completely and drastically change. So just the action of recovering the natural color of the stone by cleaning the mold and cleaning the dirt radically change the way light enter reflected into the surface.
So this is a project, fabulous workshop where family, friends, and assemblage who are just cleaning up for months all the spaces and recovering some of those existing levels prior to the first and sole big architecture action that was this fundamental first and last stone performance, where we could insert almost ceremonially and fundamentally symbolically the presence of light, the gravity of that kind of dropped stone, and life in this beautiful Mediterranean olive tree.
Yeah, so this project is really about working with very essential architectural elements, light, air, mass, understanding how they perform, humidity, all these take a big presence, although it's very hard to describe them just through images and videos because you don't feel it and you need all the senses to really feel this space. But they, by introducing these skylight and enabling also ventilation once more, the space radically changes and it's able to be inhabited, something that before was not possible.
So with the incorporation of these plastic screens, almost without thickness, that contrast with the massivity of the construction of the mine and the stone. Also with these encounters of a very poor mortar of sand with the existing stone, we could create these soft dialogues between an existing and a new material encounter. We also had to define as a home a certain differentiation between what's inside and what's outside, even though it's the space, the one that defines this immersion into the guts of the earth. But yeah, we want to show finally a short video that tells all this story of discovery through our own, I would say, surprise or fascinated encounter with the moment that we were first meeting the Ca'n Terra. I think now we should go through the exhibition opening. That thanks to the foundation and all the support of Stephen and all the team, we have created together as a virtual tour of this space that I want to drive you a little bit through it. Let me share the screen, and you have the link of this, so you can tour it individually, all of you, through the web page of the foundation. So as you can see in this, let's say, a map, there's these spots where we can depart. This is navigated pretty much like Google Earth. There's these 360 pictures. And as you can see, this is a very rural area where you have a beautiful Mediterranean low forest landscape. These pictures were taken in the summer, so everything's dry. In the spring, this is full of purple flowers and amazing change. And as you can see, this is a cut of the earth. All this was part of this line of terrain that was cut. And you know, going through these kind of lines, you can explore 360 all this scale and amazing spatiality.
which gives you an idea. I mean, this exploration, we are doing it after years of work, very slow work.
That's the swimming pool.
It's basically what we've been doing, walking and walking and walking and walking in this space, trying to see what makes sense. And what you see is actually not a finished work, because we don't know what means finished for a place like Ca'n Terra. We do know that we need to experience it. Ca'n Terra is about really the pleasure of inhabiting the earth and of developing it over time, or living it over time, and having the luxury of being able to enjoy a place like this one, which takes you away from anything that we are usually connected to. And so it's a very important experience that we are missing this summer, because that's where we would really like to be, reporting from there directly. But we'll take this virtual tour with you. And in the tour, what we've tried is to, the images, the 3D images, 360 images show current state. And then the plus signs add additional information, either original conditions, how those spaces were, or we've tried to introduce also some videos like you saw with sound, that try to give you a little bit an idea of life, sounds, birds in the space.
This space is what we call the secret garden. It's almost a Zen void in the deeper dark of the guts of the earth, no? Transformed into the lightest and more, I would say, a spiritual corner of the place. And this is the main visitor room. Stephen, this is your room when you come visit us with your family. And there's the rest of the program. We go to the other side, would be, you know, an outdoor kitchen with, this is the natural furnishing of the let's say social space, and this drives us to the more, I would say, livable area, residential. Now we might have, this is without any kind of furnishing or complement.
Where's my Anton? Can I speak?
Yes, please.
See, because now we have a chance to have a critical dialogue. Okay?
Yes.
So I want to grill you. Okay, I want to make some noise.
Yes.
This sounds like a sales job. I don't like that. I want to talk about the language of architecture. What is your language of architecture? And I want to go back for a moment to say a few things. Okay.
Yes.
One of the things that happened that I was really impressed by was Thomas Kuhn in 1962. He wrote a book called The Structure of Scientific Revolution.
Yes.
And Kuhn says that crises are a necessary precondition for the emergence of new theories, a shift in consciousness. That's what I think we need today. He said that a paradigm shift is a fundamental change in the basic concepts and the experimental practices of a scientific discipline. Well, maybe architecture is not a scientific discipline, but let's just, you know, because we have students here that don't remember what happened in the recent past, let's just remember that in 1966, with Complexity and Contradiction, the postmodern movement overcame architecture in a way that everyone had these basically eclectic historicist aspects of their work. And maybe it was because of the banalities of late modernism. Then, around 83, the deconstruction was an anti-postmodern reaction. And you had kinky skins covering, no attention to structure, formal concerns dominating. You know, we don't need to name names because that started in the mid-80s and is still ongoing. Those practitioners are still doing it. they're in their late 70s. My position, which I say didn't really form itself till about 94, was for an architecture phenomena of space, light, material, and detail. And when I first met you, and I came to that house in Madrid, I said, wow, this is aligned with what I believe in, that light, space, material, and detail. But it was like something I never seen before. And I want you to speak about that because, the language, what is your language of architecture? Because I think this cave, this house at, Ca'n Terra, it's a one-off thing. But what I see in your Madrid house, in a few of your other projects, is a kind of work on the language of architecture, which I think is a fundamental change, a kind of paradigm shift. What do you say about that?
Well, I think that the contemporary approach to a language is something that it's admitted several voices in I would say, a polyglot culture where there are multiple languages coinciding. I think what we have been working has not been in the language, because the first slide that we presented in our presentation, I think showcased an enormous diversity of, I would say, languages, but they all contain an invariant, I would say, beat or soul that is expressed through the materiality and the structure. We do think that these two combinations are the ones that fundamentally affect the apparition of the spatial event, and therefore the language is a consequential, I would say, of all this. We do not depart from the linguistic approach, and I think Ca'n Terra is the perfect example to defend this kind of very dogmatic position, where we just use it as a given, but we think Ca'n Terra is a fundamental architectural work that we as Ensamble Studio have appropriated as a continuation and an extension of all our architectural principles, and without adding not even a comma into the language of the space. That was a given. We don't hear you now, Stephen. Stephen, you're muted.
What happened? I'm muted?
No,
Oh, sorry. Now, let me just be a little more focused. When we do this in person, everybody's just drinking wine and they all just, now we can argue. We have 5 students, okay? They're assigned to do a pavilion, basically for the Bard Prison Initiative, and the what I call a fundamental change of consciousness, an exhibition center. It's 12,000 square foot. It's like a big house. It's not a big building.
Yeah.
But I don't see them being able to take anything other than light and subtraction away from Ca'n Terra. That's why I want to focus on the way you did the Madrid house or other things, and ask, what could you offer young students trying to start their work today? What could you offer them as a way of thinking about architecture that's different and special in the moment that we're living, the kind of changing moment of our times?
I mean, I think what Ca'n Terra has that also shares with other works, and we don't see it as a one-off, because when we took Ca'n Terra, we felt identified. It's the type of structure we would have loved to design ourselves, but because we found it, we can appropriate and make it an ensemble project by adding a few touches. But it does share with projects like a Menoscopium, with projects like the Truffle, with projects like Structure of Landscape, a certain willingness to deal with uncertainty, to play, to develop in a way a process where you're not so obsessed about the result, but about defining a series of rules that kind of guide you through. And what we love about this space Ca'n Terra is that when it was being excavated, it was not thought as a space. You know, there was this methodology on how to excavate, how to do one step and the next. And I'm sure there was not a plan of how the quarry would look like, right? Otherwise, there would have been maybe, you know, more equal distances between the parts. The print of the hand wouldn't be there as present. And there is this kind of very hands-on action to the space that creates something that is much better than if it had been designed corner by corner.
Right. But given the problem of a 12,000 square foot building on a site in a forest on Montgomery Place, which is basically a public park, 320 acres underneath scenic Hudson, and given the fact that there's no quarry there, and given the fact that these poor students have to come up with some way of making a building, I think that, you know, the Ca'n Terra is not applicable, but maybe the truffle house is. The way you made the truffle house, you made it, it had to be made, right? And also the castings in Montana, those are maybe applicable as a language, of a way of proceeding for, you know, young people that are just students trying to do something, right? I mean,
let me give a practical advice to your sisti, to your students, summer students. I think the first thing is to start doing with, you know, the complexities of the hands and using the model as a totemic first spatial event. I think, and I want to be exemplary in this. This is our office. This is our back kitchen. There's hundreds of models. None of them are projects, and all of them are part of the same project where we do exercise everything that we are obsessed with. For example, when we talk about modularity, we can pick any of these projects that we are doing here, that we are just working with modular compositions of a given part. In this case, it's a random staple to create, let's say, high-rise, small massing exercise. No? Or when we work with wrapped and fold informal geometries, this is a small concrete tent project that we've been honoring this model, and we just built it in Santiago Compostela with super ultra high performance concrete in a shell of half of an inch. So we've matched the craft of the idea, and the craft of the idea is, in this case, getting an Amazon box and rewrapping it again with a completely different tensional, let's say, structure. And we found a technology that could match that, let's say, a system of forces and the dream space. No? So I think there's always a departure point that has to do with a very intimate, I would say, unconscious expression. Stephen, I'm sure that your expression first, let's say, impulse is through your watercolors, your daily work of writing, drawing, coloring, and, you know, pretty much excelling everything that you have to tell. I think all the students will have to find their own methodology, and I think it always departs from a very intimate, I would say, personal, sometimes unconscious moment. What I would totally recommend as an academic and a colleague is that this is not something that you start when you get a commission. This is, and I think Le Corbusier stated us very clearly, this is like breathing. This has to do as a very daily basis, as your, you know, natural pace of being an architect. So the project is not something that occurs one day because a commission or because an event or a competition. No, no. The project is your life beat, your life pace.
Right, right. Great,
and the buildings come when they come.
So I just want to say that I'm really excited about your work since I first saw it. I guess it was 10 years ago. 10 years ago?
Yeah, pretty much.
Anyway, and I thought today was really exciting because fast forward, you know, one of the things that I loved about John Cage, and I knew John Cage, by the way, when I first came to New York, I lived next door to him in Merce Cunningham. So I knew John Cage. And one of the great moments of the life of John Cage, and you can see it on YouTube, is the thing called water music. Water music was on a TV show where John Cage played his water music, and it's a lot like this fast forward event that we just saw. So there's materiality, there's, you know, the cadence, there's light, there's, you know, and there's such a strange relationship. And I think that John Cage was like a paradigm shift in what is modern music. And I just felt when I saw your house in 2010 that I'm looking at something that's going to be very important in the history of architecture, because I sense this notion of a paradigm shift, which means the language is different. And if there's any older architects listening to this, I think they might agree that there's something going on. And I think we're living in a time where it's a time of change, a drastic change. And I hope to see much more intensive environmental work. And I love the deep connection to the natural forces of your work. But I hope somebody like a Siegfried Gideon type figure will come out and write the text for this, because I think it's pretty interesting work. Anyway, we should open it up for other questions. Are there any other questions going on?
Fast, do you want to respond to the John Cage references?
Oh, it seems very apt. You know, I'm a Cagean still, and I was.
You want to speak up a little bit, please, Fast.
Oh, sorry.
Much better now.
This is better, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah. No, I was saying that I'm a Cagean person by soul, and I was trying to remember the television show that Stephen was talking about. I thought it was the Ed Sullivan, but maybe not. But I've played that clip many, many times, and it always seems so advanced. First of all, that someone could get on TV at that time with doing such experimentalism. And then Cage, of course, holds true to his own ideals, and he makes no compromises. And that's what he did in that TV show. So, yes, I love it. And I'm definitely coming from the same place.
Maybe we could read.
Up to questions. Is there any other questions online in the?
Since Fast was talking, there is a question: where did Fast Forward? How did Fast Forward come about as a name?
Well, I don't have any spectacular news on that, except it was a long time ago. It was about 40 odd years ago, and I studied, you know, I left England and came to California, to the United States, to Mills College to study electronic music and the recording media. You can really see how I'm putting that in into practice now. And at Mills College, the Center for Contemporary Music, it was somewhat in vogue for people to adopt pseudonyms. So we had a gentleman by the name of Phil. His name was Phil Harmonic. And we had Justin Tonation and Blue Jean Tyranny. And one day I was doing a poster for an event, and I put Fast Forward. First name Fast, last name Forward. And I made the vow at that moment to, if I was going to put it down on that poster, I was going to stay with it for the rest of my life. So far, so good.
Thanks. Thank you, Fast. There is a question for Ensamble by Talash Hamidia. What kind of stone was originally quarried at Ca'n Terra?
That's a very soft stone called Piedra de Mares. To make an architectural reference, it's the same stone that in Menorca, another island, but in the same archipelago, John Hudson built his masterpiece, Candice. It's a sandstone that is very, very soft. It's almost like butter. It could be carved pretty much by hand. And it has this golden kind of consistency, but it's very, very soft. It's the contrary in the spectrum of stones. It's the contrary as granite. Granite is almost a crystal in terms of resistance and very compact and homogeneous kind of structure that you can trust. This sandstone is very malleable, soft. It's pretty much compressed sand.
And there is another question from Andres Amaya. Could you tell us, for Ensamble, could you tell us about the decisions of what to intervene and what to leave in its natural state? It's a wonderful place. It reminds me a lot of the artistic work of Teresa Moller.
Well, I think the decision of what to leave was to leave everything, maintain all the soul, all the substances, and just clean it up and let it naturally home people and activity.
Yeah, that cleaning was actually heavy cleaning because we had to not just clean the most evident, the mold on the walls, but there was a lot of residues from previous occupation. There was also a lot of sand and soil that we had to excavate to discover again the stone. So in order to have those floors and those topographies that you see of a stone, that was completely hidden. So there was it was like a work of archaeology, of excavation, to discover all the complexity of the space that wasn't apparent yet. And then just the guides for us is make it inhabitable. So how do we prevent from humidity accumulating again, ensuring cross ventilation? How do we make the most of the thermal mass? How do we occupy the different spaces also across the seasons? Because depending on the sun exposure, the winds, etc., also the internal ambient changes a lot. And this is something that is almost like re-educating ourselves in architecture, because we are used to a concept of comfort that is very easy. We just need to have 23, 25 degrees Celsius in our buildings and forget about the outdoor weather. And then we look at the phone to see what the weather looks like instead of looking out the window. In Ca'n Terra is understanding that comfort means something completely different. And you have to work with the sun, the climate, the different elements to make the space comfortable inside. So it operates under completely different rules. And also because we wanted to have it completely off the grid, that also involves another level of understanding how things work and when you can have energy and when you cannot have energy.
I want to ask a tough question. What is the difference between sculpture and architecture? Specifically, and I'm sure you know this, the work of Chillida, the very famous sculptor from Spain.
Mm-hmm.
Chillida's unbuilt mountain excavation piece, right?
Yeah.
You know the work, right? What's the name of that? I forget.
Tindaya.
Right.
Tindaya Mountain.
Tell me, what's the difference between what he proposed, which was never built, this amazing, in a way, is it that sculpture is more pure and architecture is full of all these little, what's the difference?
I hope Chillida will forgive me, but I think Chillida was willing to practice architecture with Tindaya, departing from a little sculpture that he wanted to monumentalize to the civil scale, and the unanimous, let's say, exposure to society. And that's architecture. And what we have done in Ca'n Terra is closer to archaeological sculpture, because we didn't depart from any kind of idea. We were just navigating through matter, carving out, excavating, cleaning. I would think that's what Chillida does when he has a ball of alabaster and he just starts shaping the, let's say, the softer parts of the stone, and sometimes the space guides through the weaknesses of matter. Naturally, that's the way it was carved Ca'n Terra. The guys started cutting by hand, and when the stone becomes too hard, they moved out and went always through the easy part. So I think here, the naturality of matter and the process of carving and our process of, you know, archaeological discoveries of it is closer to sculpture. And what Chillida tried to do in Tindaya was, I would say, an architectural dream.
He was trained as an architect.
I know.
Chillida, yeah. No, I'm glad you say that, because I feel the same way. I feel that that was a great work of architecture.
Yes.
I mean, it was never built, but it's a tremendous, should be, everyone should study that in terms of what is the subtractive force of light and gravity.
Chillida was also a very good reference in all our education. One of my masters, Juan Carlos Sancho, that wrote the El Croquis text for your monography, was a great admirer and also study of Chillida's work. And I was introduced to all the notions of space, of gravity, of levity, of materiality, and of craft through him. And it was also a very important presence in all our early works. Our first music school in Santiago Compostela is a synthesized objectual quarry. We did a big block of abrasive stone and we carved it architecturally in the interior with shaped, cut stone parts.
Did you ever meet Chillida? Did you meet Chillida?
I never met him personally, but he was, I visited Chillida Leku with my professor, Juan Carlos Sancho, when it was still on construction. So I knew his world, but I never met him personally.
I discovered the Comb of the Wind, isn't it called, in San Sebastian?
Yes.
And I was completely blown away. I thought it was the most amazing work of sculpture I ever experienced in my life. And as a New Yorker, you know, standing there, I thought, why is this not in the history of sculpture? I mean, it's so powerful. It's just, and after that, I followed everything. You know, I went to the, you know, everything, but I never met him, you know, but it was amazing. I thought he was, in a way, way undervalued as for what he did in the history of the relation of sculpture, landscape, and architecture in a way.
Yes, agree. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the good thing of a sculpture, I'm sure it happens with the aquarelles when you're painting, is that you're completely free and there are no constraints. It's like, you know, all of this work that is behind us, it's total creative freedom. And of course we see architecture in it, but it just takes you know, other skills, other people, other circumstances to take it to be architecture. And in that journey, it many times loses the essence or the idea. So I think that the amazing thing of a sculpture that we feel very comfortable and very close to, because we like working with our hands a lot, is that of really being able to make very pure statements. And for that, I think it's amazingly inspirational for architects. Every time we see sculptures that inspire us, they inspire us architectural concepts, I think, and ideas.
Sancho Madrugeros is in the audience, in fact, and he's asking, in addition to Chillida, how would you respond to bringing Jorge Oteiza, the sculptor, Jorge Oteiza, into the conversation?
Well, this has been a cultural conflicted paradox, the two visions of the world of the two sides of the same coin, the same culture, the same approach to space. Chillida Oteiza, as you well know, these two fundamental pillars of Spanish and Basque art scene, they differed in how to approach the same fundamental principle, is that the space is the one that drives all the let's say, sculptural and materic approach to space. And when Sancho Madridejos asked us this question, is because they know that we have been working with these two approaches. One through a subtracted principle, that would be the Chillidan way. The other one through the folding or embracing, layering of matter that surround the same spatial event. No? So I think there are two let's say, I always want to refer this to the two sides of that same coin that flips and becomes spatial. But this is an unsolved paradox, yeah, that has opened so many conversations and theses and texts around what is space. So what forces, what energies are the ones that detonate the spatial event, and what becomes a space.
There are multiple questions coming in from the audience, and let's see if we can try to address a couple here. I know Stephen Sachs was asking in the chat, what tools did you use to create the 3D tour of the site, and did you digitally survey it to get a better ability to think about it spatially?
So we used a 3D scan called Faro. That it's you know, it's not super easy to use, but it's pretty straightforward once you use it, and it's very used in architecture and also
mining.
In mining to survey sites, and it gives you you know, a three-dimensional reading, a 3D model of the space, a point cloud with absolute detail. So it takes not just the geometry, but it takes absolutely all the textures and detail with great precision.
I think that, going back as a friendly advice to the students, Stephen, I think what technology is offering us now is a fabulous tool to reverse engineering the architecture process. That generally was through the idea. We were educated that the sketch or the idea detonated the project. Well, the data was informing matter. I think technology now is giving us the ability to reverse this process and go in a very ancient way, is that the matter informs the project. You know? And by working with something that has been crafted with a very unconscious principle, but that contains a lot of architecture resources, no? like a model or a piece of matter that you could after extract all the data from it and use it appropriately to inform the projects. I think this back and forth between data and matter is what creates the contemporary project today. And all these magnificent tools helps this transfer.
One of the lectures the students got was from Stan Allen, who has a practice here in the Hudson Valley, not far from the site. And the whole lecture was about balloon frame construction, because that's the type of construction, unfortunately, that's the economic construction in the Hudson Valley. Balloon frame, and it dates back to Chicago in the 20s. And now with closed cell insulation, suddenly balloon frame construction and slab on grade geothermal as a kind of, let's say, the elements that you're going to make space with in the Hudson Valley make a lot of sense. So it's precisely because you know, what you just said is it's not within reach of these problems. You know, they're working on a site which is in the Hudson Valley, which we can geothermally heat and cool all of our spaces with a single closed loop well. The technology there environmentally is tremendous, but the technology of making a little building is balloon frame with closed cell insulation and a plywood shear wall. So, you know, you're very nice to be able to work in Menorca and find a quarry, but these poor kids, they're here in the Hudson Valley and they've got, you know, it's a different, I think it's a different game.
But I think this example you're setting with this work here and the other projects you did with the landscape architecture is that of singularity. And I really liked Marie Howe's poem, The Singularity.
Right. Singularities, right.
I thought this was a beautiful connection to your work. And maybe not all of your work will be that singular, but it has that oneness that maybe does set an example of a paradigm shift where you work with earth and nature as one, and there's a oneness to it. And I don't know if that sets an example for others to follow, or if this is a very idiosyncratic, you know, approach.
No, I think that's.
But it has that energy, right?
I just like to say one thing, because I think we're an hour and a half now, we're ready to kind of summarize, but I would say that today, because of this ability to have this conversation and argue a little bit, is probably one of the first times that we've been able to really bring the poet and the musician and what they were doing to bear on the architecture. I mean, the way John Cage was a paradigm breaking, you know, musician, a composer, and fast forward continues that in amazing, bizarre ways. And the way, you know, our poet was speaking about Stephen Hawking and singularities. I mean, this Ca'n Terra is really a singularity, but that's not necessarily a negative. So I thought what's really interesting about today is we're bringing, you know, maybe that we have to do this in the future instead of the drunken wine tasting that we do every time afterwards.
That's great.
We should still raise a glass of wine digitally to the performance and congratulate everyone. If that's okay, I can still take a couple of questions from the audience. There are many. One in particular may also interest our resident Munjer Hashim. Haruka Oki is asking for an ensemble, and I think that also may relate to fast forward. What's the difference between you redesign an architecture from nature or you create the architecture to be like nature?
That's for you.
Thanks a lot, Anton. I'm not so sure that, I mean, those are two definitions. You might have to run them by me again, but they're two definitions which the first thing that I think of is that it's not limited to individual definitions like that. And I think that the versatility of flow, everything from 0 to infinity, is part of it, and one makes calculations and decisions based on where you happen to be at a particular moment in time. I will say that one of the things that I noticed from Anton and Deborah, or I recognized, is you said a few times about how you like to, I think, let nature sometimes control the situation or influence a certain choice down a certain pathway. And that is very, very much part of what I do. And I like to think of an ideal situation for me to make music is where I'm not in any control of the resultant music. So I've been striving for many years. It's extremely hard to achieve, but now and again I get an opportunity where I set up a situation. Here it is right now, actually. No more sirens. Set up a situation that is making music, but that I might have initiated something, but I am not then controlling the full outcome. And I appreciated that from Ensemble Studio's way of working too. I think a certain empathy there.
I'd like to say one thing. Can I say one thing?
Yes.
Totally.
We are nature. We have to stop talking as if we're not. We are nature. That's what I love about your work. I love what you do. We are nature. We're animals. What's the difference? Where does nature end and we begin? We are nature as well. We have to think of another word or another thing. Until we get this concept straight, we're lost.
Agreed.
Now, we sometimes, I think, get stuck in these dichotomies, and we've never cared much about that. Actually, some of the works, like the works in Montana, you know, some people claim that's not architecture, it's art, or it's a sculpture. You know, we really don't care about that. We do care about structure, we care about the materials, we care about space, we care about the landscape and enabling amazing experiences in the spaces that we build. And, you know, sometimes we find that the resources we have give us already a lot. And sometimes, you know, the resources don't give you so much, and you have to put more of on the design side, on the engineering side, etc. Right? But I totally agree that it's not one versus the other.
If we stay for one more moment onto this subject about nature, there's a question by Catinelli about witnessing nature, intentional observation, and each one of you may respond to that. If you can discuss the process of witnessing those natural phenomena, and what's the process for this intentional observation of nature?
I just want to say again, I think when we use the word nature, we're separating from something that we cannot separate from. We are nature. What we look at is it's looking back at us. There's a mutual gaze going on here between whatever we look at. And that this word, I just feel we have to stop and question the word as something apart from ourselves. We're an animal among animals. We can't exist apart from what we're calling nature. So I feel that the gaze is a mutual gaze. What I love about your architecture is that there is a mutual gaze. You look at what's there, it looks back at you, and together you create a third thing that's livable. And then I'll stop. I can harp on this, I know.
And also it's exciting when, for instance, for works like Ca'n Terra, works like the truffle, works like the structures of landscape, or the projects in Santiago, when you do a building that you see how it keeps building over time and changing over time, because the materials, not because they don't clean the materials or because they get dirty, but because life continues in them, right? And it rains, it shines, and the seeds get planted on the facade, on the textures, and things grow. It is pretty interesting to see that something that apparently has no life actually, in a way, gets completely reintegrated in the environment.
And would you say that when that happens, none of that is happening for aesthetic reasons?
You mean the architecture? I mean,
all those changes, the light, the moss, whatever happens, it just made me think that yes, that is taking place, it is nature, but it's not coming from a standpoint of aesthetics or cosmetics or so. It's just life.
It's just part of it, and the architecture accepts it, and you know, we don't try to get rid of it. We don't mind if in the Montana project, which is a ranch. If the animals rest under the structures because it's the only shaded place there, or if with the wind there are seeds that land on the roof and plants grow, because that project was created with that in mind, was created with the context in mind, understanding that it's a remote place, that it's in a very raw environment, and that it has to deal with extreme weathers, with wild animals, etc. Right? So in a way, trying to fight sometimes the context, trying to create very sealed environments, trying to make buildings that will never get dirty. You know, it's really in a way going against how things naturally evolve.
So, Irini, I think that to answer that question from another completely different perspective, I think the arts in general have been, you know, playing with nature in a certain kind of emulation or romantic approach to it, to interpret it, you know, from, you know, the visual arts in different periods and in different styles, music also, maybe in a more abstract way, but also figuring out those sounds of nature. And architecture has been always representing in different layers its own disciplinary version of nature. I think the contemporary approach to it, the deeper, is a profound hearing of it. No? How the real sounds of what, you know, architecture is, as Marie was saying, is deeply rooted in a natural process that we are curating as architects. We are somehow transforming from the terrain to the material world and deploying natural parts in a different kind of balance and equilibrium, no? And that becoming a spatial event that we use. I think the contemporary conversation about nature as an observation you were asking, is observing with, I would say, a deeper, not only poetic, but also scientific approach to what nature is, to respond, as Marie was saying, the question, no? That what is nature? And fundamentally everything is nature. Architecture is nature. The phenomenon that becomes music and therefore transforms a connection of physics with our spiritual is nature also. It's a physical spectrum that we can hear and sense, and words are nature also. So I think this approach shall be reinterpreted and will be part of it is already part of the contemporary art and architecture, let's say, discourse.
That's right, and I think it also answers some of the other questions from our audience about relationships of your work to music, which really truly reinforce these interconnections between arts. And we've heard those sounds of the making of your work, or the collapsing of pieces of earth that are in fact resonating with the work of Fast Forward in many beautiful ways. And perhaps as a closing, a few closing remarks, there are some questions about connecting history and how to put forward the architecture, the music or poetry of the present, if we may summarize maybe on such a note, that connecting history to the present moment.
Well, I think this connection occurs in every significant art piece. There's always a connection as a last, let's say, part of the chain, no? Of what a culture connection is. And architectonically, you could be transforming a historical industrial ruin, like a mine, into a contemporary vision of space, or you could be departing from zero in the abstraction of a white sheet and turning it into a poetry. Still, there will be that historical connection. So I think that's part of I would say a humane action over something that that extends this cultural and spiritual connection into an art piece.
Fast and Maria, are there any closing remarks or messages you'd like to send out? Marie, you're muted.
Just thank you. Thank you for this intersection.
Thank you.
And I would like to say, Stephen, let's not put down those drunken red wine meetings, because they have a purpose too, which it would be very sad to see them go. And there's certain discourse that needs to happen under circumstances where we are not in full control of our faculties, I think. Thank you, everybody. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
very
all.
much.
It was beautiful. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.